Plagues. The one transcendent and personal God that Moses was the spokesperson of punished the Egyptians primarily because as worshippers of false gods, the Egyptians refused to allow Israel to worship the true God. The divine judgment over the false gods of the Egyptians, Exodus 12:12, was expressed by punishing the Egyptians with 10 plagues. Petrie, reflecting Talmudic interpretation, proposes that each of these plagues be interpreted as a specific divine response to at least one of the false gods of the Egyptians. Based on Petrie's explanation that associates 9 of the 10 plagues with specific Egyptian gods, we can correlate the following. 1. River water turns to blood with river god of Nile, Hapi. Overpopulation of frogs with the frog goddess, Heket. 3. Swarm of gnats with the insect god, Kepher. 4. Swarm of flies, same as above. 5. Death of cattle with cow god and goddess, Ammon and Hathor. 6. Plague, boils with the healing god, Sekhmet. 7. Hail with the sky goddess, Nut. The 8th plague, locusts, with the protector from locust god, Serapia. And the 9th plague of darkness with the sun god, Re. Petrie not only shows how the plagues are a response to Egyptian idolatry, but demonstrating to the Egyptians that their gods are false, since they do not help them in time of need. He also brings out the typological dimension of the plagues both with the Old Testament itself and in relationship with the New Testament. With respect to the Old Testament, the plagues are a mirror image, a kind of reverse typology of how God created the world. In creating the world, God first creates light, and in one of his final punishments of the Egyptians, God prevents light from shining in the dark. Similarly, in Genesis, God fills the waters, the land, and the sky with the multitude of life forms. In Exodus, however, God punishes the Egyptians by sending agents of death throughout water, land, and the sky. The first plague, where Moses acts on God's behalf by turning river water into blood, explains Petrie, anticipates an even greater miracle to come when Jesus turns water at the wedding of Cana into wine, and then turns wine at the Last Supper into life-giving blood, containing his supernatural life. According to Petrie, John hints at this typology by using the phrase, the first of his signs, John 2:11, to signal to Jewish hearers and readers that Jesus fulfills the role of Moses, whose first miraculous of the 10 plagues, the first miracle of the 10 plagues, was turning water into blood. Some modern biblical scholars interpret all the 10 plagues as describing not divine miraculous interventions, but rather as descriptions of unusual natural events. This naturalistic explanations of the 10 plagues of Exodus, writes Miller, go all the way back to the 2nd century BCE Jewish authors such as Artapanos of Alexandria, and Philo of Alexandria. Miller argues that this interpretation is not reasonable as in interpreting the concerned text as intentionally describing miraculous occurrences. He writes, and I quote, "First and most important is that if these are natural events, even weird ones, you lose the entire meaning of the passage, that these plagues demonstrate the mighty hand of God delivering his people. The same thing happens with naturalistic explanations for the manna. There's some insect in the Sinai Peninsula, and it eats some plant, and this crust comes out, and that was the manna. The second problem is that these readers are taking the text completely literally. Everything that's described is thought to have happened. It just wasn't miraculous. This reflects a bizarre sort of fundamentalism. Everything that's in the Bible might have happened, but there's nothing supernatural about it.